Okay, so what we do now is this is where it's you try to put the meat on the bones and start to make this real. And um, well, let me before I do that, let me give you one other thing that we'll do. Um, this is just you don't have to do this, but this is something that we do as well. Is if we like a lot of times with clients, we have they have multiple offers and things that they're going to do. And so what you can do as well, and I'll do this in a different color so I can, I'll just do it. I'll just do it in black. But another thing that we do with when we're planning this out, like for Taki or Shanda or some of these guys, is we will draw these on the bottom, and this is where we um, decide or lay down if there's a call to action or not, and if so, what's the call to action. So, like for Taki, it could be like, you know, is a call or a comment, which would be like for mini chat, or it could be like you know, uh, a webinar that we're going to do, or any number of things. So for this training, we don't have to do this, certainly. So I don't want to like muddy the water so much, but it does help, especially if you've got a lot of stuff going on. If you want to, and you get good at this, to actually add what your call to action is going to be in the bottom corner for each one of these, so that you have all that planned out as well. So then you have any links that you need to put in the post and all that sort of stuff mapped out in advance as well. So then everything is planned. Certainly, at this level, you guys don't have to worry about that, and I don't want to complicate this to the point that it makes it undoable for you. But let's start off just doing the content, coming up with how a good content calendar would look and how that would go. So um, back to this, to the green. So like how I would do this with a client and how I do it for myself is I think about, okay, my origin story. What is a great story I could tell that would reveal a part of myself, and like what brought me to this point in my, like why I do what I do, how I started this. Like not everybody, um, you know, and it's not just your origin story all about your business all the time. I told you guys, I think, about my origin story of growing up in South Carolina, small town, 7,000 people, going to Georgia Tech, starting to work, playing golf one day, meet a stockbroker from Bear Stearns. He tries to get me to come to work for him. I'm not interested. One day, after about a month, he shows me a paycheck for $169,000. And I was like, what is this? He's like, I had a good year this month, but I have a good year every month. And I was like, okay, Mr. Gecko, you got me. Actually, I didn't say that, but I was like, all right, I'm interested. That's, you can make it funny like that. So then I went to work at Bear Stearns, and I started to see people who were making as much money in a month as the richest person I ever knew was making in a year. And it sort of opened my mind to the fact that this stuff is possible for me. Up until that point, I had never seen that, right? So that is one story, but I've already told you guys that story. So another one that I could do is, the story about like, so I grew up in South Carolina, went to Georgia Tech, lived in Atlanta for 18 years, but now I live in Newport Beach, California, drive a Tesla, have a 50-foot boat, and there's like, how did that happen? That's like a weird thing, and a lot of times people only see you at the end result, and so it makes you unapproachable. So taking your origin story back to your humble beginnings and explaining, hey, I didn't always live in Newport Beach. I grew up in, a small town in South Carolina. My dad owned a machine shop. He was a machinist and never made more than, whatever, 60 grand a year in his life. And yet here I am out in California. How did that happen? Well, because I had an internet business, there was a point in our lives where we were sitting on our deck in Atlanta in a great neighborhood we lived in, and trying to have a glass of wine in like May or June. I believe it was probably beginning of June that year, and maybe it was May. And but it was like 90 degrees outside, and we were sweating. And I was like, "Why do we live here?" And my wife's like, "Well, this is a great neighborhood, great school system." And I was like, "No, why do we live like here in Georgia?" And we went on a quest, and I searched the whole country to try to find the best thing. So that's a good story. So I could tell the story about going from South Carolina to Georgia to California, and how that happened and how it happened for us and why that was like a big thing. And then how I tie that in, if I want, you don't have to always, but sometimes I could tie that in to, it's like this life is what you make it, and taking risk is important. And it's like the reason that I have the things I have is because of the risks I'm willing to take. And you're sort of planting a seed into your prospect's mind that, hey, I might want to take a risk with Kevin sometime, because this dude has, he like when you do the things that they wish they could do, then it makes them a little bit more connected to you, wanting to like voyeuristically pay attention to your content, right? And want to live vicariously through you. And so your origin story is a real help for that. So telling that story, and I've got like a bunch of great elements to it. Like we drove across the country, did the Route 66 thing. I've got some great pictures from that. And so that would be a great origin story for me to tell. And part of the deep work that you want to do is you want to come up with at least 5 different elements of your origin story that go through and like not during your content calendar, but this is like at other times when you're planning this out, which is part of the work we do with our context group, is come up with like at least 5 different turning point elements in your origin story that have made you who you are today, right? And then what you're able to do is, if you're only telling one origin story post a month, that's 5 months worth of content. But over time, you'll develop a lot more. Like I've got way more than 5 now. But anyway, so that's how you would plan it out. As you think about what would be a great origin story thing for me to tell that would have a little bit of a point, but not like a heavy-handed point that I could do. So that's number 1. So then a rant video. Rant video is like where you pick something that like pisses you off, and you go on and do a Facebook Live. So these can be videos, or these can be Facebook Lives. They're more powerful if they're Facebook Lives, because you'll get more engagement and you can engage with the audience real time. So I recommend doing that. I also recommend making it a video and then putting it on YouTube as well. But so a rant video, like we did these at one of Taki's events, and everybody across the board had such a great time. They were so nervous about doing it. And then in the end, it's like the results, like, people respond to a rant, especially if it's well thought out. So, a rant could be like, if you're against the hustle movement with Gary Vaynerchuk, you could rant against Gary V. And so the rant video is like also like your nemesis. So you could have this be like your nemesis post, where you're going against somebody. You're Superman, this is Lex Luthor. You're Batman, this is the Joker. To you, right? They don't have to be a bad person, but to your cult and your movement. Like a lot of this is cult building. You're building a cult, and so that's what you want to be doing here. So like a good rant video for me right now would probably be like, I could rant against the cryptocurrency stuff and say, all these people think that they're building a real business by trading cryptocurrencies. I've seen it all before, back in 96, 7, 8, 9, 2000. Everybody thought they were doing something real with the stock market with the start of the internet, and then they all lost all their money and got crushed, and there's so many people that are ignoring their real business by, wanting to trade crypto and do all that stuff. So that would be a good rant to do. Vulnerability post. We talked about that at Todd's at the event, but that's where you talk about the thing that you don't want to talk about, right? And get into it, and it's something that is hard for you to share. Like I got a great vulnerability post about like something that is one of my most embarrassing moments in life, and it's when I was a kid. I was 14 years old, and I went to a golf tournament, and my dad showed up to support me, and he was in dirty clothes from working all day at his machine shop, and I was embarrassed of him and kind of snubbed him at the golf tournament in front of my friends. And I mean, it like brings you can't see it because I'm not like I don't have the camera going here, but I mean it kind of makes me tear up in embarrassment even to this day, like to think about that. So I would put like golf tournament, dad, dirty, or something like that. And one of the keys with a vulnerability post is there's no lesson. There's no. If you try to take off your vulnerability hat and put on your lesson hat, then you just become like a dick, right? You're not the person that's really being vulnerable. Then you're just manipulating people, and so doing a vulnerability post is like it's a powerful way to like work that arc, So this nemesis, so the origin story, kind of starts off here. The nemesis takes you up, this takes you down, and then the last thing you can go into is like a battle story. And a battle story would be, something in the trenches that you're doing, and it could be like good or bad or whatever. And a lot of times, a battle story is a great way for you to teach a lesson or to display a superpower or a weakness. I can give you one of my battle stories. I worked so hard to build up, money from my internet businesses, and then I'm a curious guy, so I like to try a lot of things. I invested a bunch of money into an apartment complex and lost like all my money. Well, not all my money, but like almost all my money. Lost $300,000 at the time. This was back in the early 2000s, like 2003, and it like it backed me up all the gains that I had made up to that point. It like reversed and pulled it back, and so that's so I could do like my real estate investing, apartment loss story, and the lesson is focus on your real business, the thing that you're good at. Don't get distracted by all the stupid bells and whistles of things that other people are making money at and doing good at. You don't have to do that to be successful and to do well. So that's the character arc for a month. I've got my story about moving from Georgia to California, which I could do. Cryptocurrency rant, which would like be really good because right now, as of yesterday, I think the Bitcoin went down to like 9,000 from being up to 19. So everybody's probably freaking out about that. Vulnerability story about me being a complete loser jerk when I was in high school to my dad, who was working so hard to support us and do it all as a single dad. And then lastly, a battle story of a loss in this case was how I, took money that I had built up from businesses and selling and saving and all this stuff and just completely went into something I didn't know anything about and lost it all because I was dumb. And, have a lesson of, focus on what you're best at and grow that instead of trying to have multiple streams of income and all that stupid stuff. So that's a good character arc for the month. And next we're going to talk about the credibility arc.